the very first episode of the Mad Minute with our first guest, legendary value investor Guy Spier. Welcome, Guy.
Yeah, Pete, it's great to be here.
I appreciate that.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and dive into a Mad Minute. So, if you care to discuss some of your morning routines.
Yes, exactly. So we were going through this, and uh, there's an article or a form of article that used to be in the FT where they'd interview people and they'd ask them about their routines, and I was always blown away by how precise some of these routines are. And I think that I don't have any precise routines, and I think that I oscillate between being incredibly focused and driven, and in those times in my life when there's a big goal that I'm trying to achieve, and it's usually because something's happened to me, not because I woke up one morning and decided that XYZ was a good goal to achieve, then I've been extraordinarily disciplined, which involved getting up early and a whole bunch of things that I did in the morning. But these days, I'm not, other than wanting to live a good life. I'm not focused on anything right now. I'm in a mode where I'm relaxed, and so I try to hit certain things in the morning, but I specifically am not trying to make demands on myself. And I try to get some exercise. I try to get good sleep, and if I've been up late, then I want to allow myself in a certain way to sleep in. It's worth saying actually that I like to sleep with some natural light coming into the room where I'm sleeping, so I can wake up naturally, and that would mean that I don't try and do breakfast appointments or commit myself early in the morning, so that my morning can unfold the way my body wants it to unfold. And so if I'm enormously tired, I might sleep quite late. But if I'm not enormously tired, then the sun will wake me up. And breakfast with my children, I try to do every morning, but it doesn't always happen. And arrive at work relaxed. What I would say is that may also be, I'm still very connected to the US, and I'm here in Europe. And so I have slow mornings because the day really, in all sorts of ways, the periods of like 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. is a time when both Europe and the US are awake. And so that's kind of the most intense time of the day.
Right.
It might be different if I was in New York, where I had a lot going on in Europe, and then maybe the most intense time of the day would be the morning.
Right.
I think that it's also important that there have been times in my life where I've been confronted with a challenge, and when I've been confronted with a challenge, to have a very strict and disciplined routine has really helped me to face up to that very difficult challenge. So the first time that happened to me was at university, where I was in danger of being thrown out because I changed courses and I wasn't very good. And I dealt with the stress of feeling like I was not good enough and feeling like I might be thrown out by keeping a strict discipline. So I'd be up at 7, go swimming at a nearby swimming pool, have some breakfast, be at my library desk at 9, studying and beavering away until 1 p.m., 1 hour for lunch, and then back for another 2 or 3 hours after lunch. And that discipline kept me safe and made me feel secure. So instead of living in enormous uncertainty of whether I'd survive at university, that time discipline kept me safe. And that also was the case in writing the book.
Right.
So when I was writing the book, I was getting up at 4 a.m. And I was getting to the conference room in my office at 5 a.m. and I was writing till about 9:30 a.m. before my normal workday started, and it was the only time I could find to write. And so, but right now, zero waking up discipline, zero morning discipline at all.
So, how do you actually get inspired, and what keeps you motivated?
Yeah. So, and this was also, it was interesting for me to think about this, is that, I am so convinced that the Montessori education that my children have gotten is the right thing. And one of the key aspects to the Montessori education is to teach the child that success is not about making yourself sit down and do something against your will, but it's discovering. It's for the child to discover where their true interest lies, and to go and do that thing that is what is truly interesting to them. And I think that I've spent far too much of my life actually making myself do things I wasn't all that interested in.
Right.
And so in a certain way, I take issue with the question, because I don't think you can get inspired. You become inspired. And I think that the way you become inspired actually is not by saying, what do I need to do right now, rather than listening for what is truly interesting. So find out, and in a certain way, what is truly inspiring is almost surprising to the person, because it's new and different, and it's exciting to them. And if it's something that you know about, then it can hardly be exciting. So to wake up and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe it, but what I actually want to do is climb Everest, or do a car rally, or cycle an enormous distance," or that. So the last time I got inspired in that way was actually over the Horsehead bankruptcy, where I found myself in a situation where I suddenly realized that I wanted to take on that fight. And I was uniquely placed to do it. And if I didn't do it, nobody else would do it. And that was what I wanted to do. And when I took on that fight, I was inspired, and I was focused, and I was working very hard on it. But it's not like it's those decisions. It's not something that you do. It's something that happened to me.
Right.
And I think that I would tell you, actually, the book as well is something that happened to me. Right. It's not like I woke up. I was writing. I decided I wanted to write. I wanted to see if I could write a book. But then the sort of intense 2.5-year period when the book actually got written and the book got sold was it happened to me,
right.
because I was collaborating with somebody called Jessie Gamble, wonderful woman. Oh my God, the phone's just gone off. I'm going to have to, where's this coming from? Hold on a second. Sorry about that. You'll have to cut
problem.
that out or something, but that was a...
No, this is raw. This is raw. We're going.
That's my iPhone over here.
We're going full Monty.
Yeah, but... and she wrote a book proposal and asked me if she could send it to to her agent, and I was like, yeah, sure. But I didn't think anything of it, and suddenly I discovered that the book was being auctioned, and that I had a choice to make if I was going to accept one of the bids on the book or not. And suddenly I was facing a very real deadline, and I knew I had to do it.
Right.
I just knew I had to do it. I think that's what it really is an interesting question for me, which is probably not for a mad minute, but inspiration is when something shows up and it's like, oh my God, I have to do this.
Right.
It's my destiny to try to do this.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying once something's grabbed your interest, that's sort of the inspiration itself. The interest comes first. The inspiration comes from that.
It's like, what is it that when a certain sperm hits a certain egg, it manages to make its way inside, and bang, a new life is formed. And I feel like when I've gotten inspired, it's a similar kind of thing. It's like something happened, and it's kind of miraculous. I don't know where it came from, but now I have to go do this thing, whatever it is. That happened to me when I did my first triathlon. I was like, and it's like, I know I have to do this. I don't know about you and getting married, and those are the most fantastic periods in my life, actually, because It's kind of, I feel like I'm riding the horse of destiny or something.
Right.
And when I'm riding the horse of destiny, I become incredibly focused, and life takes on a kind of a luminescent quality. It's kind of an incredible time. But I think that first of all, I don't want to live my whole life that way. I think that living my whole life that way, I'd be exhausted. It would be too intense for me.
Right.
And there's a great benefit to just vegging out. I think there are times when one should veg out. And I think that the way to that is to listen. It's really to listen. Who am I? What am I supposed to be doing right now? I'll tell you what's actually difficult for me is that what I realized earlier this year that I still haven't managed to do is that I need to go on a meditation retreat.
Right.
and I haven't yet done it. And that's what I really need to do. I just know, there's a part of us that is truly wise, that knows what we truly need, and that's what I actually need to do right now. And
Okay.
that's what I need to get under my belt. And I think there's some self-knowledge and self-discovery that I have to get to, that I will only get to when I put myself in a room with nothing to do, with a bunch of other guys who've got nothing else to do than to sit and meditate. And there's wisdom that will come to me from that. There's a piece that I read by a guy called Arthur Schopenhauer. And by saying his name, you're going to think that I'm this guy who reads all this philosophy. I haven't read much Arthur Schopenhauer, but he kind of said that the guy who reads all the time and doesn't write is not very interesting to him, because if you just read, you're just filling up your mind with stuff. And sometimes you have to empty your mind, or you have to process what's in your mind.
Right.
And I actually think that I'm at a point in my life where I've got 50 years of life experience. There's an awful, in the book, I did a lot of processing to write the book, but there's a whole bunch more processing to do, actually. And I can't do that by reading more. I can't do that by doing more. I have to do that by listening, by quieting down. So,
Yeah, and for our
yeah.
listeners, Guy's book is The Education of a Value Investor, and I'll have some links to it in our comments section. As you
Thank
know, the
you.
format of the podcast is inspiring successful people like yourself. So, one question before the final fun question on the Mad Minute here is, at what point in your life did you consider yourself a success?
Yeah, and I was thinking about this. I just gave a talk at a conference here called the Zurich Project, and the people in the room. I was thinking to myself, I wish I was just an audience member and they were up here. And I think that we were talking just now about imposter syndrome, and I would tell you that I have imposter syndrome a lot. And I also think that it's sort of partly influenced by wanting to make the book a success. I used the book's platform, and under the sort of like with the desire to, because I wanted the book to succeed, I sought out opportunities to appear in front of groups of people, because by appearing in front of groups of people and talking to them, that would generate sales for the book. And so that was important to me. And in the process, I learned to be good at it and to promote myself to do that. And I kind of achieved some kind of minor celebrity status. And so there's a level on which that's a kind of a success, a kind of being well known as a kind of a success. But I can tell you that it is a very, very shallow kind of success, because I'm not deepening my knowledge of myself when I do that. When I show up in front of a group of people, I'm sort of being who I am, but I'm not learning an awful lot. The group may be learning a lot, and there's a certain amount of joy out of that. So I kind of, I didn't realize that I was, as a result of the book, I was looking for a certain kind of success that actually when I got it, I'd realize wasn't really all that worthwhile. I don't feel any sense of envy for any of the minor celebrities or major celebrities that I see. I realize in a certain way how trapped they are. And I think that I would tell you that the people who just continue to seek it out. So, with the greatest of respect to Kim Kardashian, if you continuously seek out celebrities, so I'm really impressed by people like Madonna. I mean, who sees Madonna these days? She understands that celebrity is just, who sees Tina Turner? Extraordinary woman. She understands that celebrity is not all that interesting, actually. And that the success that I think I've achieved a little bit of, and that I really feel like I've so underperformed my ability, my capacity is to, to be in the world, or to have lived in the world in such a way that people are really grateful I exist. And I think that what was going through my mind not long ago was this idea that if we were to rip away all bank accounts, all wealth in the world, and so Warren Buffett has the same net worth as a guy living in Bangladesh, do any of us doubt that Warren Buffett would be extraordinarily well placed to live a really wonderful life and to rebuild his wealth faster than anybody else, not just because of his mind, but because people would want him on the board, his boards, on their boards. People would want him involved because he's got such an extraordinary reputation, which goes to show that money in the bank or fame are not actually the most important things to me. It's that social capital, that just the number of who are grateful that, in Warren Buffett's case, that Warren Buffett exists in the world. So I think that, I think I've achieved a certain amount of success in that there are people who are grateful that I exist in the world. And I started figuring that out not that long ago. But that's what I really want to work on over the next decade or two. And I think that that's something that is well worth working on because first of all, it makes people happy, makes the world a better place, but it's also a very, very durable asset. As if we take the example of Warren Buffett, with all his wealth removed from him, he still has that asset. That's an asset that you can't take away from somebody. And, even though I regret very much not investing in Amazon stock, when many opportunities were afforded me to do it, this idea that Jeff Bezos has, that focus in a world where everything's changing, focus on the things that are not changing. People's desire to feel valued, to feel loved, to feel like they're of significance to me, those are all ways in which I can serve other people. And, I'm looking forward to finding more ways to do that. I think I've done it to some degree. When I was doing that call where we met, I did that.
Right.
But then it's really important to follow up on that. So not just be an interesting guy on the call, but actually to follow up with people and show them that I actually care about their success.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So for the Mad Minute, we're hitting near the top of the hour, and I know you have to go. So final fun question. If you could have a superpower, what would it be and why?
Yeah. So here's my little superpower is I think that my wife has it to a much greater degree than I do, which is when my wife walks into a room, she has a much better read of what's going on in that room, who's thinking what, who's happy, who's not happy, who's comfortable, who's not comfortable. And I think that so the superpower I would want is to understand how people feel, to understand what they're thinking, not to get into their thoughts so that I can use their thoughts in some nefarious way, but to be able to read where they're really at. Are they really happy? Are they really angry? Are they really fearful? Where are they? And to be able to meet them on their territory, because I think that the capacity to make somebody feel understood is one of the most powerful things on the planet. And the people who have the ability to make somebody in their presence feel that they understand them. I think that this South African bishop, Desmond Tutu, has a very strong reputation for that, is something that is not just, makes you indispensable, but it also heals the world, it heals people. And so I think that that's, that would be an incredible thing to have. And, in a certain way, something that is great about those kinds of powers is that they're not zero sum. So, if I want to be the richest guy in the world, then that implies by definition that there are other people who have less than I do. And so even though in a growing economy, wealth is not zero sum, on some level, if Warren Buffett has an extra billion, it means somebody else has a billion less or a dollar less or however much it is. But this idea of, we want to live in a world where there's no limit, I think, to the degree of understanding we can have for each other. Right. And so I feel like that's non-zero sum. I wish it for myself, but I also wish it for everybody else as well. And it's so I'm not taking away from anybody else's ability to do that in wanting it for myself. And if other people can have it, then we're all in a better place, basically.
That's fantastic. All right.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank you for joining me on the Mad Minute. And that was legendary investor Guy Spier with us for our very first episode and our very first guest.